Dad, can we open a different set? I haven't pulled anything in a week.
Can we? What? Harry, Maze of Millennia is what is known as a once-a-year product. We are obliged to open as many as we can. Look at it, Harry. Look at the ultra-rare thrust. We didn't have reprints like that when I was a kid.
Peter, do you got any rarity collection? I need plus value. God damn it.
Harry, you forgot your midstream Maze of Millennia box.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. This is Peter. Peter, Dad.
Nice to meet you, Peter. Say, what do you know about Maze of Millennia?
Maze of Millennia? Oh, I don't know. Bonfire's cool, I guess. Well,
Peter, you see, Maze of Millennia releases on January 19th by Japanese multinational entertainment company Konami. Following the mixed reception to its predecessor, Maze of Memories, it was unexpected for the product line to continue, but Konami brought it back to import 2023's Animation Chronicle after Battles of Legend launched without them.
Dude, what the fuck was that about? I'm telling you, man, I haven't seen a secret rare in weeks. Bonfire searches any level 4 or lower pyro monster. That it? Oh, damn, if I'd known it was going to be cards that simple, I'd have made the McRib beam longer. Alright, so obviously very easy to understand, but very strong nonetheless. When this card first came to the OCG, the joke surrounding it was that it would be interesting to see how good a Rhoda for the worst monster type would be, but then immediately things started changing for Payne's underprivileged pals, and long story short, Pyro's good now. Obvious first option is Volcanic, the perennial example of a Pyro deck. With its new support, Volcanic can use Bonfire to get Rocket or Trooper for normal summons to get your plays going, as well as Rimfire and Shell as good discards. Centur-ion gets to use Bonfire to grab Trudea, one of their better starters, but that does introduce a point in the combo that can lose to Droll. All the level 1 Snake Eyes are on the table, but the best play with Bonfire for them is still a little bit away, so we'll come back to that in due time. TG's recently got Salamander, so Bonfire can grab a starter for them too. If Prank Kid ever starts existing again, surely it's the 30th kid that gets you. In all of these decks, there's the option of playing a copy of Agnimal Candle, a tuner that summons itself upon being added to the hand as an alternative option if you've already got enough engine. So too is their Nemesis Flag, which can search Eschatos, the type counterpart to Protoss that can win just about any matchup with the aid of Reproducus. In the future, keep it in mind for Gen X, maybe Ritual Beast, Flamvell support any day now, I guess. And of course, it goes without saying, any Pyro monster printed from this point on can be judged a lot more favorably given the existence of both a Rhoda and a Broad Bull for the entire type. This past year has given the Disciples of Pain a whole new lease on life, but don't take it for granted. As was seen with Rocks in 2020, what is given can also be taken away. Misbehave and we'll never print a good Pyro again. Holy shit! It's Squandrew, Squidward's saxophonist half-cousin. Play those funky notes, Squandrew. Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper summons level 5 or lower Earthbound from deck on summon, but locks you to fusions and synchros and protects all your Earthbounds from destruction while there's a field spell up. Linewalker searches either Earthbound Prison or Harmonic Synchro Fusion on summon, and while you control high-level Earthbound, can banish itself from graveyard to bounce an opponent's monster to the extra deck, and then let them summon it right back out. Stone Sweeper can built in if there's a field spell up, and can pitch itself from hand to search a level 3 or lower Fiend Tuner, but locks you to fusions and synchros. Earthbound Prison ties itself in absolute knots to say that it negates something when it's activated, gives you an extra normal of an Earthbound, and when your opponent removes it, it halves their life points and negates their board. Harmonic Synchro Fusion sends 2 monsters you control to the graveyard, and summons both a fusion and a synchro monster that could be summoned with those 2 as material, and locks you to those 2 types of monsters. Earthbound Servant Geo Gremlin has this Dryden effect that doesn't work, and during the battle phase can Miracle Fuse an Earthbound monster. Geo Griffin quick effect reborns an Earthbound but locks you, and when it's removed, pops a card on the field and pings your opponent for each different Earthbound on your field or graveyard. Geo Kraken grabs any field spell from deck or graveyard on summon, and when a card is summoned from your opponent's extra, destroys all their monsters that were special summoned this turn, and dings them by 800 for each. And Geogracia is a fusion of an Earthbound fusion and an Earthbound synchro that zeroes out anything it battles, wipes your opponent's board anytime one of their cards is destroyed, and if it's outed, floats into an Earthbound from deck or extra. Really not a lot going on here, if I may be honest. Outside of the fun, janky potential of Harmonic Synchro Fusion, there's not much else mechanically interesting about these guys. Stone Sweeper searches Groundkeeper, Groundkeeper summons Linewalker, and Linewalker searches Synchro Fusion, and then what? You got 2 tuners on board, that doesn't do anything. The only non-tune in the archetype is Stone Sweeper outside of the Immortals, who have nothing whatsoever to do with the Synchro Fusion stuff. And even if you draw a second Stone Sweeper, you can't summon it unless you draw a field spell. Prison's not really good enough to play 3 copies, and the only archetypal way to search it is Kraken and Linewalker, so that's a no-go. Geo-Griffin can summon back the Stone Sweeper you pitched to search, but if you want to normal that Groundkeeper, the best way to summon Griffin without the normal summon is E-Telly for Psy-Reflector. Assault Mode engine in a post-Grand Creator's world. What are we doing here? So it seems like you're just gonna have to load up on level 5 extenders like, Jesus Christ, Kaiser, Vorse Raider, Red-Haired, Hasty Horse. These are not real cards. Ready and Instant Fusion can get you 5s for Synchros that double as fusions for Dragostopelia. The reason 5 is the magic number here is because it lets you make a Muddy Mud Dragon with Groundkeeper so that HSF translates to both Hot Red Abyss and Grapha for 2 negates. Geo-Kraken is kinda cool because it can grab a Floodgate like Necro Valley or Zombie World while also having its own Torrential-like effect to punish your opponent's extra deck summons. To make him, you pretty much have to get a Stone Sweeper on board though, so that's even less consistent. Really just not a lot of consistency or flexibility with not very much of a payoff either. Stone Sweeper does of course have a pretty decent pool of search options, and as such will at least see play in Resonators. Gives them one more way to Soul Resonator that doubles as a way to find most of your tune or extenders. Not much else willing to get locked for that search though. Kaidotera is a level 4 dinosaur that searches Polymerization, and when it's banished summons itself and adds poly from graveyard to hand. Hornsaurus is a fusion of Kaidotera and any dragon or dino that attacks directly the turn it's summoned, places a field spell from deck on summon, and gives you an extra normal of a dragon or dinosaur. Interesting new little engine. Kaido with any other dino or dragon in hand gets you a field spell and an extra normal. That's the first real in-engine way for dino to search Lost World, that's pretty nice. And since Kaido has the same effect as Giant Rex, you can almost perfectly swap it into that exact slot with maybe the attack stat or attribute coming up once in a blue moon. I hear what you're thinking, why the fuck would I play Poly in Dino? But no need to worry because Dino is actually already playing a fusion spell. Ground Xeno is an excellent searcher for Scrap Raptor and Meteorus, but unless you choose to play the lackluster Gigantozowler, it just rots in the graveyard after that with nothing to use its fusion effect for. Converting that into Lost World and an extra normal adds a lot to existing Dino lines with very little actual opportunity cost. And of course the ability to pivot to a different field spell is great, maybe ending off a combo by putting up a Necro Valley or getting Ravine to try and do some sort of Dragon Link play like milling Absa and grabbing Rocket Synchron to use that extra normal on. Silly concept I know, but that does lead us into the fact that the reverse is also true of Hornsaurus maybe being an option in Dragon Link, given that every mention of dinos on the card also mentions dragons for whatever reason. If you don't want to force Kaidotera into your list, Muddy Mud Dragon exists. I guess that's kind of true for any deck, a level 6 Synchro play plus the most generic dragon, probably this thing. And boom, any field spell in the game. Although fair warning, being able to grab any field spell doesn't make him good with all of them. Placing the card from deck isn't the same as activating it, so you won't get searches from cards like Perloreno. Being a level 6 does make it quite easy to convert into Ancient Fairy Dragon, so you can get Ravine for Destruda just to trade the Ravine in for something you want in hand. Being a 6 does also make it really good as a material for Lars or Beatrice. I think the card's got a lot of potential that hopefully we'll see more labbing with in the TCG than it got in the OCG. Transaction Rollback is a normal trap that can pay half your life to copy a normal trap in your opponent's graveyard. It can banish itself from graveyard and pay half your life to copy a normal trap in your own graveyard. If this card only had the first effect, there probably wouldn't be much to talk about. Just an overly reactionary going third card you have little to no control over. But when you can copy any normal trap effect in the game of your choosing without needing to pay any of the costs just by getting in the graveyard, what do? You play Floodgates. This card has seen huge success in Labyrinth as a discard for furniture that then copies a Floodgate like D-Barrier from the bin for an easy lingering Floodgate. Stuff like Barrier is the most justifiable as a card you're already playing anyway, but you can go much further by playing a copy of Ghost Meets Girl to dump to the graveyard, floodgating your opponent out of all special summons other than from the graveyard for the turn, while also skipping the cost of tributing a Mayakashi or Shiranui. Splitting the difference, there's also Eradicator so you can clear your opponent's hand of spell or trap cards without having to sack a lady. If you can't manage to get a Floodgate or Blowout like that in the trash, it can also just copy one of your disruptive traps like Punishment and Karma Cannon, giving you extra value off your once per turn interruptions. And if you use 2 pieces of furniture to pitch Rollback and Evenly during the end of the battle phase, you can chainlink 3 Rollback to copy Evenly and make your opponent banish down to 0 cards. Since Beatrice can dump Rollback on your turn and whatever trap you want in your opponent's draw phase, a simple rank 6 play sets this up on its own, Virtual World mentioned. With the banning of Agido and Kelbeck, maybe Tearlament could use a new angle like this to convince us it's still real. I really dislike having to say they made another light purple Yu-Gi-Oh card and it's the most obnoxious shit ever every couple months, but clearly Konami is no longer interested in doing really anything with this entire third of the game aside from an extra archetypal disruption here and there and Floodgates. I don't know what I meant to make of that. Armored Xyz, the Yu-Gi-Oh card, not to be confused with the archetype Armored Xyz, which this card is a part of, is a spell card that doesn't do jack shit. The reason we're here talking about it is because it's the second search target for Xyz Armor Fortress, and therefore there's 2 reasons you might need to play it. So to preface, if you've forgotten how this engine works, Fortress can't rank up into Dark Knight Lancer if it has any material, so if you draw the trap card Full Armored Exceeds, there won't be a target left in the deck for its effect to search, and therefore no way to detach its one material. Armored Exceeds is a justifiable include to give you a second option so you never get stuck unable to use the engine. Secondly, since its effect has to search different names, if you rank up Fortress on top of a monster that still has a material, you'll need 2 differently named targets in deck to get both the mats off. Will any of this really matter? No! The only deck so far that's seen any success with any part of this engine, Mikanko, hasn't even used Fortress at all, correctly recognizing that it kinda fucking sucks. Instead, using Digital Bug Korobage to convert a rank 3 into a rank 5 so you can put Lancer on top of it, and using the equip effects inherent to the Mikanko archetype to trigger its effect. I don't know if this archetype is hopeless per se, but as someone who's an expert in the field of being hopeless, I can say that its prospects aren't looking amazing. Chlorless, Chaos King of Dark World, is a fusion of Old Rainbow and 2 or more Fiend monsters with 1000 attack for each material that nukes your opponent's board on summon and can quick effect discard a card to make a card you control untargetable for the turn. This card has a huge amount of inherent strength, being potentially 2 interruptions for Dark World. Dark World's fusion spell Accession is a quick play so you can launch the board wipe on your opponent's turn and adds itself back with upside so you can use it to summon Graph on your own turn while still being able to set it for your opponent's turn. The innate technique of Accession, treating cards fused from hand as being discarded, means you can also use it to trigger 2 or more Dark World effects on your opponent's turn, like Grapha for a pop or Snow for a search, and the Curse Technique Reversal, letting you banish material from graveyard, means you can also choose to summon it while losing no card advantage at all. And the quick effect isn't inherently disruptive, but like Accession, gives you a free chainable way to trigger a Dark World like Grapha, making it kinda like a Dairy Crane style Dryden effect. Of course, the major drawback is that you have to play Rainbow, who doesn't do anything. Unlike most Dark Worlds, he only has an effect that triggers specifically when he's discarded by the opponent. You can of course force that with Grapha or Ceruli, but most of the effects you could be triggering this way are already more desirable than a choice between Raigeki and Duster, without even taking account the ability of all these cards to do something proactively. But hey, sometimes you gotta play bad cards, we've all been there. The good news, of course, is that all you gotta do is get him to the graveyard at some point in your turn 1 setup, and then you're set up for this big flashy blowout play. This unfortunately leads to the bigger problem that Dark World doesn't need a big flashy blowout play. As long as Silva exists, there's no incentive to build the deck to do anything other than hand loop your opponent for 6. Setting up Chlorless is no more consistent and certainly not provably any stronger, and although Rainbow can be replaced by a substitute like Mud Dragon or Versago, 2 Fiends isn't really generic enough to be teched into a different fusion deck like Grapha was. So when it comes down to it, this clearly very powerful card likely just doesn't have a place inside or outside the deck it was designed for. Maybe in Master Duel, where Silva was pre-banned, he can be part of a more active build-a-board strategy, but I stopped playing Master Duel when they tried to make me play tier format again, so all I can say to that is good luck fighting for that extra deck slot, bud. We're rooting for you. Photon Delta Wing is a level 4 light machine that summons another Delta Wing from deck when he's normal summon, but locks you to light monsters for the turn. Listen. Number 1, Infection Buzz King is a rank 8 that rips a card from your opponent's extra deck on summon, attaches a card from your opponent's graveyard during your standby phase, and can detach a material to pop a card your opponent controls, and if it was a monster, burn them for half its attack. The Volcasaurus tier list, coming to twitch.tv/Sazetta just a week away. This card's a strong addition to the rank 8 lineup for blind second 8-axis decks, with its pop effect alone being a huge step towards pushing for game, and its other 2 effects being useful to stifle follow-up plays or for the unfortunate scenario where you're forced to go first. Turn 1, an extra deck rip can be debilitating for decks not built to respect it, as we've seen in recent formats, and going second can take away cards like Access Code that would give your opponent the ability to swing the tempo of the game back in their favor. Meanwhile, starting your turn by slurping up a card out of your opponent's graveyard can potentially disrupt their options to play on your turn, while replenishing materials to use the pop. Outside of these more dedicated strategies, decks with rank 8 axis like Fire Kings have this card as a good option, and also, listen! Arcana Force 15 the Fiend is a level 7 light fairy that can pitch itself to add light barrier, and I am not reading the coin flip effect. It's about time Arcana Force got a way to search the only card that makes the deck work, if you can even call it that, but in terms of the practical application of light barrier, the World FTK, it seems kinda like it's well and truly missed the boat. Like, come on, there's been 2 generic field spell searchers in this video alone. 2 more in Battles of Legend last year. So no matter how you slice it, it's kinda unlikely that searching this thing as a stepping stone to light barrier is gonna be the easiest way to search it next time someone tries to turn skip. Best we can hope for is that this will be the harbinger of some new Arcana Force support to come that completely refreshes the deck's identity and, I don't know, makes it a deck at all. Flame Swordsman is a level 4 Fire Warrior that searches a spell or trap that mentions Flame Swordsman on summon, and if it's sent to the graveyard, mills a Flame Swordsman or one of his groupies from deck or extra. Hector Salamanca, the Flying Flame Dragon, is level 2 Fire Dragon that can equip to a warrior from hand or graveyard, gives it 700 of its Flame Swordsman or a fan of his, and when he's sent to the graveyard can search a Salamandra spell trap. Mirage Swordsman summons itself from hand or graveyard when a fire fusion dies, can destroy both monsters whenever it battles, and when it's destroyed, special summons a level 7 or lower associate of Flame Swordsman LLC. Flame Dragon is a fusion of a dragon and fire warrior that can quick effect equip itself from field or graveyard to a warrior fusion you control, to give it 700 and an extra attack. Ultimate Flame Swordsman can pop an opponent's monster and ping them for 500, let's just pencil it in for lawful neutral in the Volcasaurus alignment chart, and can do it as a quick effect while it has an equip. Also, when it battles it can double its attack, but it dies in the end phase. Flame Sword is a quick play spell that can search a card that shouts out Flame Swordsman, pop a card when a fire warrior battles, or negate an effect that targets a friend of the channel. Flame Sword's realm makes the normal summon window of fire warriors unrespondable, can sack a monster from hand or field to summon Flame Swordsman from extra deck, and when an attack is declared, can cut the attack of a warrior you control by 1,000 to give your other monsters 1,000. Salamandra Fusion is an equip spell for fire warriors that gives 700 destruction replacement, and if it's equipped to a fusion monster, can sack it to summon Flame Swordsman or a fusion that mentions it from extra deck. Salamandra with chain, Mr. Squidward, with chain, equips to a fire monster and flips a monster face down, and you can banish it from graveyard to fusion summon a fire warrior or dragon fusion monster by shuffling back materials from hand, field, or graveyard. Make note of how this one doesn't mention Flame Swordsman, meaning it's only searchable with Flying Flame Dragon. And finally, Flame Sword's Dance activates when a monster is special summoned to summon a level 7 or lower Flame Swordsman looking ass fusion monster, then flip a monster on field face down, and during your opponent's battle phase can banish itself from graveyard and tribute a face down monster to summon any of Flame Swordsman's mutuals from deck or extra deck. First and foremost, this is a huge step up from last year's Gate Guardian support. I mean, geez, the only DM vanilla older than I am that the deck makes you play is in the extra deck. That's a major improvement right out of the gate. But there's also like one card starters, worthwhile payoffs, splashability. It's like night and day, like they remembered how to make cards or something. But I'm getting overly preoccupied with cards we're not talking about today. Let's get back to the task at hand. Starting from fighting, you could search Realm, trade fighting for vanilla, fighting mills Salamandra, Salamandra searches fusion, and fusion trades vanilla for ultimate to whom you can equip Salamandra, giving you a quick effect monster pop. Flame Sword grabs fighting in the draw phase for some wiggle room against Droll, and if you don't need the search or have an extra copy in hand, its other two effects insulate your board from things like SP and Zeus. The traps both being Book of Moons with upside gives you a strong alternate search target for each of your spell and trap searchers if you already drew the spell you need for combo, and since both Chain and Fighting Flame Dragon equip at spell speed 2, there's some decent synergy with Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles and the blue one, whose current best trigger point is Roland, whose activation is locked to the main phase. Perhaps there's a world where, in the rebuilding process of Infernoble, there's room on the team for a small package of Flame Swordsman cards just so you can equip Salamandra with Chain to Charlemagne, or maybe there's room in the Flame Swordsman extra deck for the best card of 2017 as a ready fusion target to tune fighting into Charles. Ready, instant, and armament all seem like reasonable options in the extra deck since they can all summon the OG, although how you proceed in a hand like that is not exactly the clearest line in the world. It'd be like, what? Normal fighting, search fusion, activate ready, equip fusion to vanilla, make ultimate, and then what? Are you getting flying into the graveyard? They should make a Link 1 for Warriors. This is a good idea. Listen, it's still early. This is what's great about TCG exclusives. We get first crack at showing what these cards can do, and we've still got some time to figure it out. Maybe this deck won't be all that great, but there's a really good basic framework here that I think will be fun to cook with. Okay, summary paragraph. Bonfire and Transaction rollback are gonna be good. I think Hornsaurus and Flame Swordsman are cool. Rest of the set is pretty uninteresting. There's reprints again, and I think they suck again, except they has Thrust, but it's an Ultra, so it's going to be like $40. Good job, Konami, but also go fuck yourself. Join us for next year's Maze of Masturbation, where we discuss the potential of the Guardian Elma retrain in Mikanko or whatever.